Hello, Father Fred here again today. Today, I'm inside again. You notice that because outside it's 95 degrees and it's so much more comfortable in here. So I might be in here for some time because it's going to get hotter and hotter. Now, today we're going to be on episode 11. Already finished 10. Goes by quick. We're on episode 11 and we're going to take two chapters today. We're going to take chapters 10 and 11 because some of it is by the redactor and it's just repeating himself over and over, and I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to bore you with it, and I'm not going to go to all the trouble of going over it and over and over, just seeing the same thing. Now, last time we had, of course, chapter 9, and that's when Noah, he got into the wine cabinet and got a little bit tipsy. So he laid down on the ground, and for some reason he took off all his clothes, had on nothing but a smile. So as he comes to, he looks around and he's mad. He ought to be mad at himself, I'd think. He got drunk. But scholars say that wasn't really anything that was wrong, because he didn't know it, because he's the first one that drank it. Well, anyway, he decided to get after somebody else. So he put a curse on a guy named Canaan, and Canaan was not even there. I think he might have been born, but he wasn't there. He put a curse on him because of what his daddy did, Ham. Now, they don't know what Ham did, but he put a curse on Ham's son, on Canaan. Now, so we have learned now that Noah has three children: Shem, Ham, and his other one. What's his other one's name? Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Now, Japheth is a good one, and Shem is a good one. But Ham, for some reason, nobody knows what he did, but his daddy, Noah, was sure mad at him. So he told him, he said, "You're going to be a slave." Now, Canaan is a special word there, because that's going to be the land where they settle, where the people settle before God's people get there. But God's people is going to come in and take it from them, just like the descendant of Shem is going to be Abraham, and he's going to come in to Canaan, and they're going to take that land. They are their descendants, one of the two. So now we're going to look at chapter 10. That's where we're going to start right now, and it's the redactor. Now remember, the redactor is this. The redactor is, he's got these stories. He's got a story of the flood. Actually got two of them, at least two. Got a story of creation, at least two of them. Got stories of Adam, of Abraham. And he didn't want to just have a story and a story. And so he decides to put them together. So he links them together by using genealogies. 10 different genealogies, going from Adam to Noah. And then we're going to have 10 more that goes from Noah to Abraham. Let's look now. Open your Bible if you got it. Now, I would suggest this too. If this is the first time that you're listening to this, it would make so much more sense if you go to episode 1, because it builds. It's kind of hard to see what's on the fourth floor of a house if you don't have the first floor. You got to build them one at a time. So the best would be to go to chapter 1. But now we're here in chapter 10. And look at verse 1. It's so easy to tell the redactor. I mean, his fingerprints are just like that. Here's what it says. These are the descendants of Noah's sons. And everybody knows that it's going to be the redactor. It says that over and over. These are the descendants of Noah's son, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, to whom children were born after the flood. Now you might notice they're listed this way: Shem, Ham, and Japheth. But starting with verse 2, it's not going to just tell us about the sons, it's going to tell us about the sons' sons. And we're not going to go through all of them. But first of all, verse 2 says, the descendants of Japheth are Gomer, Magog, Madai, Javan, Tubal, Meshech, and Tiras. Those are his sons. And then it even tells the sons of Gomer and so on. This was a switch too. At the first, it listed them as Shem, Ham, and Japheth. But as it goes through now telling us who the descendants are, it's going to be Japheth, Ham, and Shem. It puts Shem last because that's where we're going to start tying in with the redactors, sons of, sons of, sons of. It's going to go through Shem to get to Abraham, not through Ham. He's out of it because of something that he did. And it's not through Japheth. For some reason, Shem was the one that was chosen. But in the first verse, it was Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Now it's going to be Japheth, Ham, and Shem. Verse 6 says this: the descendants of Ham, and it's going to be like this all the way through, the descendants of Ham are Cush, Mizraim, Put, and Canaan. There's Canaan. That's the son of Ham. That's the one that's going to be the slave. Now, I'm not going to read all of those, but just go. Let's go now just to verse 19. This is chapter 10, verse 19. So that the Canaanite borders extended from Sidon all the way to Gerar near Gaza, and all the way to Sodom, Gomorrah, Admah, Zeboiim, near Lashna. All the country is from, this is how the world gets populated in the redactor story. He goes like this. He starts with the sons and the sons and the sons and the grandsons, and then they go out. That's how they populate the world in the redactor. They're going to populate it differently when we get to chapter 11, and we're going to have, well, we'll just wait and see about that. Let's look at verse 20. And this is important. Well, it's all important, but this is really something that stands out. These are the descendants of Ham. That's the second son, the bad boy. These are the descendants of Ham, according to their clans, according to their languages, plural, languages, lands, their lands, plural, even their nations. They're even forming nations now. That's how the world gets populated, according to the redactor. The descendants of Shem are going to be these. And Shem is the one that we're going to be interested in, because that's going to be the lineage from Noah to Abraham. The descendants of Shem were Elam, Asher, Apachad, Lud, and Aram. Now, those are his children. Let's go down now to verse 31. These are the descendants of Shem, according to their clans, according to their languages, plural, languages. They all speak different languages. According to their lands, they're in different places. According to their nations, they're spread all out. This is how they get spread out in the redactor. They're going to get spread out a different way in the next chapter, and it's not going to be the redactor. It's not going to be the son of the son of the son of. It's going to tell a story. And you know what happens when the story? It's going to have Lord or Jehovah or Yahweh. One of those three. And since Jehovah starts with a J, and in Europe, Yahweh started with a J, because J in Europe sounds like a Y. So J-A in German, for instance, Yah means I. J-A spells Yah in German. So when you brought that from German to English, they brought the letter J, okay, but they didn't bring the sound. We gave it our English sound, which is Jah. So instead of Yahweh, it becomes Jehovah, Jah. The J has a different sound. So we call this writer J in the next chapter. These are the descendants of Shem, according to their clans, according to their languages. Remember, languages, their lands, and their nations. These are the clans of Noah's sons according to their origins and by their nations. From these nations of the earth branched out after the flood. They're going to cover the world now. That's according to how they covered the world with all these children. That's how they covered it in the redactor, because that's what the redactor is about, telling the Father and the Son and the Son and the Son. That's the story that's going to get them all over the world. Now we're going to go to chapter 11. And chapter 11 is going to get them all spread out for a different reason and a different way. So let's look at chapter 11. It's called, and you're going to know this, the Tower of Babel. When you babble, you just babble along, don't say anything, nobody understands what you're saying. Like a babbling brook. Doesn't say anything. Verse 1 says, now this just sounds so odd to us. The whole world had the same language. Remember back there that they all spoke different languages, they had different lands, they even had different nations. Now they all speak one language. How can it be in chapter 10 that they have all these different languages, but in chapter 11, now they speak one language? I think you already know the answer. It's a different story. Chapter 10 started from the beginning of just Shem, Ham, and Japheth. And through sons and genealogy, they populated the world. They're going to populate the world in a different way. They don't want to go out. They want to stay in one place. I'm going to read that again. Verse 1, the whole world had the same language and the same words. Well, if you got the same language, you're going to have the same words. Verse 2, when they were migrating from the east, they came to a valley of the land of Shinar and settled there. Now that's over to the east, is toward Mesopotamia, toward the Euphrates River. And there's somebody going to come out of a place named Chaldeans, that's right next to the Euphrates River. They said to one another, come, let us mold bricks and harden them with fire. They used bricks for stone and bitumen for mortar. Bitumen is kind of like an asphalt. That's what they used to hold the bricks together. That's the same thing that's going to be used in Exodus when we come to Moses. He's put into a basket that was sealed with bitumen and pitch to keep the water from getting into the basket, because Moses is going to float down the Nile River for a while. Verse 5 says, and this is what tells you that it's going to be from the south, in addition to it being the story. Now it says, the Lord came down to see the city. When you see the Lord, just like in that flood story, when it was the Lord, it was the J source. Another characteristic or a clue is, when it's this source, you've got a God that's close to you. Like in the 2nd chapter of Genesis, God walked with them, he talked with them, he dug up, he planted a tree, he cultivated the land. In the story of the flood, he regretted things. He could smell the sweet aroma from when you got this J source, the Lord, or Jehovah, or Yahweh. You're going to have a God that's so close to you. They felt so close to this God. Not with P, not like in verse 1. God said, let there be sun. Boom, there's the sun. If he had done it in this, he would have taken the people up there and they'd have made that sun together. He worked with them. Verse 6 says, then the Lord said, if now, while they are one people, see, they're one people here. They're not spread out. And all the same language. They just got one language now. They have started to do this. Nothing that they presume to do will be out of their reach. We can't let them do anything. If they can do this, they can do anything. Same thing in that Garden of Eden. He told them, don't you eat that tree of knowledge. He didn't want them to know necessarily good from evil, because they were only doing good. They didn't know about doing evil. Now it's the same thing. If they build that tower, they think they're going to get closer to God if they build a tower. We might have some people like that now too. Build a tower, they're going to get closer to God. So they got two things going against them there. Well, let's look at verse 4. Again, then they said, come, let us build ourselves a city and a tower with its top in the sky, and so make a name for ourselves. Yeah, they want to be important. We shall be scattered. If we don't do that, we'll be scattered all. They don't want to be scattered. They want to stay right there. So they got three things against them. To get to God, you don't build a tower. They thought if you got up on a mountain, you were closer to God. Number one, if they build a tower, they're going to get close to God. That won't get it. They wanted to be important. That was the second thing wrong. The third thing was they want to stay in this one place, but God wants to send them out. He tells them two things. I want you to have children, your progeny have children more than the sands of the earth, more than the stars in the sky. I want you to get out there and have children, and I want you to have land. They can't have land if they stay in one place and build this temple. So they got three things going against them there. And they get swamped with those three things. Verse 7 says, come, let us go down there and confuse their language so that no one can understand the speech of another. That's why it's called the Tower of Babel. They just babbled, but nobody understands what's being said. And this close God. He says, he doesn't just say, mess up their language. He says, let us go down there. And you notice he says, let us. Could that be the Trinity? Possibly. Could it be a holy group of people? A group of maybe angels or something? But it says, let us go down. Just like he did in chapter 1. Let us make man and woman in our image. He's a close God. He comes down to where they are. Verse 8 says, so the Lord scattered them from there over all the earth, and they stopped building the city. Yeah, they couldn't understand each other. That is why it's called Babel, because there the Lord, that's going to be Yahweh. The Lord confused the speech of the world, and from there the Lord scattered them all over the world. So we got the same story, or the same result. To get them all over the world in the redactor, he just has them have a bunch of kids, and the kids just go. In chapter 2, he has to give them a little impetus, a story. The first one wasn't a story. It was just the son of, the son of, the son of. That's the redactor. This one is a story. They're going to build this place. They got it all in their mind, everything they're going to do. And they get stopped. But it's a story. Verse 10, we're going back to the redactor. And it's going to be, we went over this once before, so I'm just going to kind of skip over it. I'm not going to go through all 10 of these genealogies. But the first one says, and this is so easy to find them. The descendants of Shem to Abraham. And that's what this chapter is written about, to get from Shem to Abraham. First, to get them spread out over the world in that Tower of Babel. They had these two stories. They had to put them in there. You can't put in one and leave out the other, because you're going to upset somebody. So he's got two stories. These are the descendants of Shem and Abraham. Now we got four things that we always do to remember. Just this. These are the descendants of Shem. When Shem was 100 years old, that's the first thing. When Shem was 100 years old, he had a child named Apashchad. That's the second thing. How old he is and his son. Third thing, when Apashchad was 35 years old, he begot Shelah. He's going to have another child, or his son's going to have a child. Apashchad lived 400 years, and what did he do? And 3 years afterwards, he lived for 400 years, and 3 years after he begot Shelah, and he had other sons and daughters. Over and over and over. We'll do that one more. Down at the bottom, when Peleg was 30 years old, he begot Reu. How old he is? And he goes, his child. Peleg lived 209 years after he begot Reu. So there they are, how long he lived after this. And the last thing is, he begot other sons and daughters. 10 times it said the same thing. We're not going to do it 10 times. But let's look down at verse 24. We're going to come to something that's starting to move the ball along. Verse 24 says, when Nahor was 29 years old, he begot Terah. Now, Terah is important. We're going to find out why. Nahor lived 119 years after he begot Terah, and of course, he had other sons and daughters. And when Terah was 70 years old, he begot, and this is what the whole thing was here for, he begot Abram, Nahor, and Haran. Abraham had two brothers. Probably sisters, but the girls aren't mentioned. And Haran begot Lot. Now, of all of them that could have children, remember in the past, of all of those three boys, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, it just mentioned Canaan because he had a special purpose. This one, Haran begot Lot because Lot's going to have a special purpose for a short time, but he plays a big part for a while. Verse 28 says, Haran died before Terah, his father, in his native land in Ur of the Chaldeans. Ur is a place right over by the Mesopotamia, right by the Euphrates River, and it's the people that lived there were called Chaldeans. He's from this place called Ur from the Chaldeans. Abraham and Nahor took wives. The name of Abram's wife was Sarai. Sounds kind of familiar. Abram is going to become Abraham. Sarai is going to become Sarah. And there's a reason, because it means something, and we'll find that out. And the name of Nahor's wife was Milcah, and she was the daughter of Haran. So Nahor married his brother's daughter, which means he married his niece. Nahor's wife was Milcah, the daughter of Haran, the father of Milcah and Ishkah. Now here's something that's thrown in just out of the blue. Sarai was barren. She had no child. That is put in there, just thrown in. It's going to be something important. Very important. It's going to bring the whole Israelite nation through this woman. But she can't have a child. But it's mentioning her, not just that it's a different person, it's a woman. If you see a woman's name, there's going to be something special. Terah, now Terah is Abraham's father. Terah took his son Abram, his grandson Lot, son of Haran. Now Haran died. And his daughter-in-law Sarai, the wife of the son of his son Abraham, and brought them out of the Ur of the Chaldeans, that's where they lived, to go to the land of where? Canaan. They're going to go take that land that we promised to them back there with Noah when he put that curse on Canaan. But when they reached Haran, they settled there. So they didn't get to Canaan yet. This is just one step on the way. It's a long, long step too. The lifetime, now here we drop from this story. We're going back to the redactor. And you'll know it right now. The father of Terah was 205 years old when Terah died in Haran. So that's where Abraham's father died. And that's just given a statistic, and that tells us that it is the redactor. That's the end of the chapter. We got to cover 2 chapters today, 10 and 11. So next week we'll have chapter 12, and it'll also be episode 12. Now they're coming out even because we took 2 chapters this time. Here's what I'd like for you to do. I would like for you to share this. Share it with other people. Share it with people that might not know as much as you do, and let them know how much you have learned. One thing you've learned, you cannot read this Bible literally. It was never intended to be written that way. But when we try, what happens? 40,000 different denominations. No other book can you read and get 40,000 people not just being different, condemning each other? You're learning to read the Bible, I believe, the way it was intended to be read. Share it with people. If you've got a comment, write it down. If you don't like something I said, that's okay too. Write that down. But I'll see you next week. And so, as we say in Spanish, hasta mañana iguana. Have a beautiful day.